turn our hearts away, like a silent choir, too scared to sing the anthem from a braver day, a song our children need to hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix. Too scared to sing the anthem from a braver day, a song our children still need to hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix.
G'day there, Copper.
Woohoo, and thanks again to Michael for putting together our intro after the other one expired. The license expired.
Apparently.
And I'd say one thing to Michael. I love it. Thank you very much. But it's a tad wary. I'd like to think there were one or two things I did in my life apart from fly around in military aircraft.
Oh, I get the farm ones up again where you're zooming around on your little farm buggy, mate. So yeah, that might be a good one. We might do a rehash. But no, it is good. It's catchy as well. Don't mind it too much. It's pretty catchy, and it looks like we're streaming across all the platforms. I just done a tech check, and we've got Persia already saying g'day already as well. But I'm seeing that it's streaming on all platforms. I'm logged on to all of them, and at this stage we're tickety-boo, my brother Bruce.
And I must say, I like Persia's little icon there. What do you call those? The icon in the corner? What are they? Avatar.
Oh, the avatar.
I like the avatar. And I was wondering, is that my black cat Nixie, or have you got a black cat too?
What's Nixie doing? Roaming the neighbourhood and finding other owners.
I did go away for the weekend, and I arranged for the neighbours to feed the cats, which they do, which is fabulous. But I came home to a crime scene.
Oh, yeah. Again, more rabbits?
There was a lot of feathers on the bath mat this time.
Oh, birdies. They've been hunting on the property. They've been hunting. Yeah. And good to see that we can call you Sean for the episode, and but it says you've found a cure for grey hair, and it looks like that's it.
It works.
It is. It does work. It does. Yep. Nice and easy to look after. Yep. What is it? Oh, she's a cataholic. Okay. A cataholic. Good on you, Jace. Good to see you, and then firing nice and early, brother.
Now, Jace, I'm a bit disappointed. Normally, Jace contributes something that's a wee bit saucy in his comments.
Maybe he's behaving. Maybe he's noticed there's certain ones I don't put up.
So far. Yeah.
In the title, Lord Bruce. Good on you, Luke. That's nice. Lord Bruce.
Where's that?
Yeah, from Luke on YouTube.
Ah, so, right. Yeah, well, that's on all my official correspondence.
Only to bureaucrats.
Yes.
And government officials.
Given that I'm Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, what else could it be?
Yeah, that's it. Anyway, what do you reckon, mate? Have we got a big one today, Bruce? What are we looking at from your slides side of things?
About average, so you got time to squeeze maybe one or two topics in yourself.
I'm just going to do the one, and we'll see where it leads. I'm pretty sure that we're and Carla's watching from X, so good at streaming to X. That's good. You saw it from there. That's good. Yep. Oh, and Jace is saying he's just maybe just woke up in hospital from a procedure. Okay, so a bit flat. Flat.
Oh,
flat
depending on the drugs, they can be very funny in that sort of.
Well, he is saying I'm drugged, so he's got a good reason to be there. He's got a good reason. Now, Bruce, my little opening segment is is as a result of a mate of mine who's also a viewer. He watches all our shows, been watching for a long time. He's also a Christian friend of mine, and he sent something through after our discussion, because obviously I did my little PowerPoint on Orthodox Church, but we also talked briefly from that about circumcision and your view on that now. And he sent me something through. He had a bit of a contestation around what we were talking about in regards to circumcision. But I've got to obviously premise that. And good day, Andy, if you're listening, brother Andy. He is a Christian, and I obviously sent this through because it's a book that he's read. It's been around for a while, and it's apparently just been recently updated. So just going to share my screen quickly and just show you. This is the book he sent through. So it's called None of These Diseases. So he's a Christian writer, and so I'm just going to go through a couple of this little author's note here. It says about that. Extraordinary medical benefits are available to those who follow the Bible's teachings. The authors deal with stress, sex, anger, circumcision, tobacco, and more. With over 1 million copies sold, None of These Diseases has become a classic. Recently revised and updated, the book takes the current generation back to the Bible for medical lifestyle prescriptions. Now, for the first time, the book is available in an audio version, read by co-author Dr. David Stern, both a physician and clergyman. The cassette promises to be a great pass-along ministry. So just a bit of an overview of from the Googles on this one as well. The core themes are sanitation and hygiene. Shows how biblical rules on quarantine, waste disposal, and cleanliness protected early societies from disease long before the discovery of germs. Emotional health, it explains how destructive emotions like anger, guilt, and stress harm the body, and how biblical principles promote mental peace. Lifestyle guidelines discusses the physical benefits linked to biblical practices such as dietary choices, circumcision, and rest. So its author is S.I. McMillan, MD. And so that's been updated. So, and he did request for me to send it through to you, but I thought when I saw that, I'd do my own little bit of research to see what came up, and I'm pretty sure that you'll have some comments anyway afterwards. But I just thought I'd bring up a sort of a brief of stuff that I'd come across for Andy as well, and for us, and for the audience and you. So. The reason I put this together is that obviously Andy's challenged our circumcision stance by citing a popular Christian book claiming the Bible predicted circumcision's cancer protective effects thousands of years ago. So claim A is the empirical. Male circumcision is statistically associated with lower cervical cancer risk in female partners. Claim B is theological rhetorical because of claim A in ancient religious texts demonstrates supernatural medical foresight, which by extension validates its authority and implicitly that circumcision is medically obligatory or without a legitimate opposing case. So I did a bit of a look at what the epidemiology actually shows. The case for an association in cancer is 2025 systemic review meta-analysis on this study, pooling 19 studies, found an odds ratio of 0.65, and you probably understand this more than me because I don't have a scientific background, for cervical cancer in women with circumcised partners, roughly a 35% reduction in odds, with similar reductions for invasive cancer, dysplasia, and carcinoma in situ individually. The Rakai Uganda RCT, strongest design in this literature since men were randomized, found circumcision reduced high-risk HPV prevalence in female partners by 28% over 2 years. At 24 months, the IARC multinational case control study found no overall effect of circumcision on cervical cancer risk across the general population. The protective association only emerged in the subgroup of monogamous women whose partner had 6+ lifetime partners. The case for skepticism on that, Van Howe, 27, found no significant association between circumcision status and HPV infection risks when reanalyzing the same broad literature, directly at odds with pro-circumcision reviews using overlapping data. Firsch and Earp, 2018, published a critical assessment arguing the evidence base for circumcision as a public health measure in developed countries is weaker than commonly presented, and pushed back specifically on the CDC circumcision guidance. Their piece drew a published rebuttal defending the CDC position. So this remains an active, unsettled dispute in the literature, not a fringe view being ignored by mainstream medicine. Confounding is real and hard to fully strip out. Community HPV prevalence, number of partners, screening access, smoking, socioeconomic status all move independently of circumcision status and independently affect cervical cancer risk. Even the strongest studies show the effect concentrates in high-risk partners subgroups, not a flat population-wide protective effect. Heterogeneity, the 2025 meta-analysis itself reports 67%, meaning substantial between study. Inconsistency is a real signal, but not a tight, uniform one. So where that leaves the empirical claim, there is a genuine replicated but modest and conditional association, strongest in higher partner risk context, weak or absent in general population, and disputed by credible researchers on methodological grounds. That's a defensible position to hold, and it's also a defensible position to be skeptical that it justifies population-wide practice, given the modest effect size, the confounding, and the fact that HPV vaccination now addresses the same causal pathway far more directly and completely. Skepticism about circumcision as a public health tool isn't contradicted by this literature. It's a live, respectable position within it. So there you go. So that's a bit of an overview on that. Won't go into too much, but yeah, too much more. But yeah, just thought I'd push it over to you for a bit of comment. You've got some notes there. As you've got some notes, and there was some closing stuff on there that there is not enough. There is, though it's more modest, contested than the book suggests, with real published skepticism. The mechanism the book cites, like smegma, isn't what modern virology identifies as the cause. That's HPV. So even the Bible got the medicine right. Framing is built on an outdated explanation. The studies with the strongest design show the protective effect concentrated in specific high-risk contexts, not a blanket population effect. Correlation doesn't resolve the separate clinical and ethical questions around performing an irreversible procedure on a non-consenting infant, and I think that's what one of the points you were making. Yeah, and that's what I think your point was. Your overall point you were making when you come to know what was going on. But anyway, so there you go, Andy. So it wasn't a Bruce explanation. It come from me. I did my own bit of digging. I know you wanted me to send it to Bruce, but I thought, oh well, Bruce is busy putting other stuff together, so I thought I'd do a bit of my own research, and I thought I'd cover it.
Did you grok it?
I multi-googled and lots of other things. I brought it all together. Not a grok. I don't just rely on grok like Dr. Dan. I just sort of brought in a lot of information from elsewhere.
All right. Well, I have to respond, and we don't want to make this an entire 2-hour show about circumcision, although I promise you I could. And the reason I could,
There you go.
if you remember at the start, I said I love the intro and thanks very much to Michael, but I have done other things in my life apart from having fun in military aircraft. And amongst the other strings to my bow, I'm published multiple times in the medical literature on the topic of neonatal circumcision. That's something you didn't know. Okay. And doing that, I discovered that neonatal circumcision, so circumcising boys when they're babies, is a cult. It's a cult every bit as powerful as the vaccination cult. And I believe it's driven by many of the same drives. It's driven by them, get them young before they get a choice, because if you give them a choice, they'll say no. So there are any number of purported health benefits touted there, but let's just look at the cervical cancer thing. And let's assume for the purpose of discussion that the HPV virus, if viruses exist, let's not have that 2-hour as well, is a contributing factor. Okay. What is the risk that a neonatal or infant boy is going to engage in promiscuous sex with 6 or more partners? So even if that's true, even if it's protective against cancer in somebody else, why the rush to do it used to be done on the first day of birth. Now it's often delayed to about 6 months. And the reason it's delayed is because if you do it on the first day of birth, you can do it without anesthesia, and that is a barbaric crime, okay? You know, your baby boy is born, welcome to the world. The first thing you know about the world is you have nasty pain in the end of your penis. Welcome to the world, okay? So that's what we used to do. And because of a lot of pushback, they've actually delayed it until adequate anesthesia can be given, and that means much later on. You know, nobody wants to anaesthetize a baby on day one for an elective procedure that has no benefit until they're at least in their mid-teens. Okay, so there's that. Now, let me address some of the purported benefits. So they say, okay, less cancer risk in either the male or in the female partner. And again, you know, if we're going to have a biblical argument, what does the Bible say about faithfulness and adultery and so forth? So if you're going to quote the Bible at me and saying the Bible justifies circumcision, how about the bits about not sleeping around? Can you quote them as well?
Yeah.
Let's just look at what circumcision is. So nature relentlessly and persistently, no matter how many times and how many justifications we cut it off, persistently keeps producing baby boys with a protective skin enclosure for the end of the penis. Doesn't matter how many times we cut it off because we don't like it, the next time a baby boy's born, there it is again. So this is not an evolutionary accident. This is something that evolution favors because it keeps coming back, right? You can't get rid of it just on single case. So again, isn't man made in the image of God? So why is that an imperfection? And I don't think there's anything in the Bible that argues that the removal is a correction of God's error. The Bible's all about sacrificing something important as part of a sacred contract with God, a covenant with God. Yeah. And let's face it, if it wasn't something important, there'd be no point in offering it as a sacrifice. You know, you sacrifice a goat, you sacrifice your children, whatever. God doesn't, I'm paraphrasing here, God doesn't care if you sacrifice a tin of baked beans. It's got no value, okay? So baby boys are born with a protective coating on the sensitive end of the penis, and they need it because they spend the next few years in nature sitting in the dirt with the old fella dangling in the dirt. So they need something to protect it, and that's why it's there. Okay, that's why it's there. It's not an evolutionary error. It's got a real use. Now, removing it is not trivial either. It's not just cutting off a useless flap of skin. Circumcision removes about half of the penile skin because it's folded in on itself, and it removes a very tender piece, sensitive piece of skin, and it exposes another sensitive piece of your anatomy, which as a result toughens up, it scars up and becomes dry and hard. That's not what it's meant to be like. Now, the result of this is twofold. One is that the penis never works like it was intended. It's never as good. And that's important. Now, the other thing is that in the same way that if a kid is deaf at birth and nobody picks it up until they pick a number, 3 years of age, and then they get the bionic ears, they never get very good hearing. And they never get very good hearing because they've spent the first 3 years of their life not getting that part of their brain to develop because there were no signals coming to it. Same with circumcision. If you ruin the sensitivity and the function of the end of the penis in a baby, the part of the brain that connects to that, and people like using later, never fully develops either. And in fact, if you leave men the choice, do you want to have this done as a baby without your consent and maybe without anaesthetic, or do you want to wait until you're an adult and make the decision yourself? Almost none of them do. And that's why the cult has to get you young before you can say no to it. Now, in the relatively few cases where there's a medical reason to do it, and there's bugger all, but occasionally you get disease or the foreskin genuinely won't retract, and that's probably vastly overcalled. In those cases, you've got a diseased foreskin, which they cut off. Now, in that case, a lot of adult men will say, I was better after you cut the bad bit off. That is not the same as cutting off the natural, healthy bit at birth and preventing it ever developing all the connections.
Mm.
And I guess finally, even if there is some reduction in risk for the partner, is it ethical?
Mm.
You want me to lose a part of my body so someone else gets protection? And you want me to do it at birth so I can't say no? And where I've got other options like, okay, maybe I won't sleep around. The ethics of that are horrific. And what is the NNT, the number needed to treat? How many baby boys have to sacrifice an important part of their genitals to stop one case of HPV? You know, there are some numbers quoted there, but they're relative numbers. You know, it was 0.8 down to 0.6 or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
What's the real number? Is it 1 in 1,000? You know, is it one, instead of being 1 in 800 women, does it drop to 1 in 1,000? You know, is it a significant reduction or only a relative reduction? Anyway, enough said about that, I suppose.
Yeah, no, well, that's right. And, you know, it again, it's that whole disease thing in that. Like I say, I want to sort of go back to what you were saying is ultimately God is a perfect God, and he would have created us perfectly from the beginning. And it was ultimately a covenant thing, as he set a certain group of people apart from himself. But, you know, for those, I guess, Christians or people who aren't you know, Christians, or where we come from, if you look at the contested New Testament and the book of Acts, you know, at the end of the day, you know, James and Peter and the council decided that Gentiles did not need to physically circumcision to be saved, though they were asked to avoid certain practices like food offerings and sleeping around and so forth. So Paul also wrote in Galatians, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision has any value. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love, through accepting Christ is the sacrifice. He was the fulfillment of the Old Testament. Even though I have to, you know, have to correct and say that Christ himself, as part of the tribe of Judah and being a Jew, he was circumcised himself because he continued to fulfill that covenant. But Paul sort of explained it as a spiritual circumcision. So how could Gentiles or any others come into salvation through Christ if you're not circumcising the heart? So it's your condition, and this is what it's called. This is that separation from a Jew. I'm not a Jew, so how am I going to be saved? And so, it's not through circumcision; it is through circumcising, changing your view on life, your view towards Christ, God, Holy Spirit. It is a changing in yourself. So it's an internal circumcision as opposed to an external circumcision. But anyway, we're not all going to agree. I know that. You know, there's obviously, you know, challenges out there. I know 1984 punks definitely we're not aligned. I see all the comments coming through. I'm not going to throw all of them up there, but I fully understand. You obviously don't agree, which is okay. There's a ton of comments in there. I'm not going to put all of them up there, but we're just going to agree to disagree. It is what it is. But you stand where you stand, and others stand where they stand at the end of the day. But I thought I'd bring that up. Conversations, people can email us, put comments in and so forth, and that's where it is. Yep.
Now, I said my rant was over, but it's not. Mm-hmm. So let me throw another couple of examples at you. So a lot of people treat football as a religion, right? Collingwood supporters. Mm-hmm. How about if you tattooed the forehead of your kid at birth, I love Collingwood? Would that be okay? You've permanently marked them as a believer. Would society regard that as okay? I don't think so. And another analogy, breast cancer is pretty common. All women are born with what will become breasts. Should we chop them off on day one to prevent them getting cancer, or should we maybe just wait and see whether it ever is a problem and then address it? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now,
well, the other one too with that is that we made a choice with our girls. We've got daughters, in regards to ear piercings and so forth. When they were old enough and they saw others, girls or women with pretty things dangling from their ears, and they said, "I want to have some." It was totally up to them. It wouldn't pierce the ears any earlier than they could make a decision on that. And this is, it comes back to everything that you're kind of saying there is in regards to that. So, which is fair enough. But yeah, But yeah, I don't, you know, I just don't think that comments like that are real helpful, but that's okay. You've got an opinion to do that. You know, you've gone clearly through Marxist indoctrination, but anyway, you're totally entitled to make that comment on this channel. People, well, we're not censoring. So anyway,
and that must either be a new viewer or a bot for Dr. Dan, because that's such a ridiculous and unfounded thing to say. That's not even worthy of comment, is it?
No, but anyway, that's all right. It's okay. Not everybody's going to agree. But that's okay, Bruce. What do you reckon? Should we get into it?
Let's do this thing.
Let's do this thing. Oh, do you need a screen? Do I need to get rid of mine?
I'm up. I will rely on you to rescue me tech-wise as ever. So what have we got here for number 118? 118. That's more than 2 years, you know. I'm a little disappointed. I thought we would have been banned by now, but there you go.
Well, I mean, you know, there's a difference to being banned and being suppressed as well, right? So anyway, there you go.
Righto. So what are we doing this week? So here's the contents list. So we'll do a little bit of an update on the Gulf War because it is expanding as ever. And I'm going to repeat what I said 3 months ago when it started. Do not take this lightly. This is a very serious threat to our way of life, the world economy, etc., etc. And it's further along the train, and it's worse, and the risk is higher now. I personally think, one, I was criticised at one point. I said there's going to be diesel rationing. I think it was Dr. Dan said we haven't got it yet. Okay, patience, grasshopper. And I think a recession is baked in, if not a depression. Everything hinges on the cheap energy and the products that come out of the Persian Gulf. And the longer it goes, the longer the disruption and the bigger the risk of permanent infrastructure damage, which is going to shut it down for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we'll look back fondly on the days of $3 diesel. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Watch this space, you reckon, hey?
Watch this space. Not easy being green. Shock report says that nobody trusts the CSIRO, Australia's premier scientific body on climate science anymore. Joe Nova, I think it was Joe Nova, might have been Andrew Watts who profiled that, and I'll show that story. Money and finance. A regular theme of this show is that they are coming for your super. We're in the late extractive phase of a dying empire when governments are just going to hoover up any money they can find anywhere. And your super is a very large pot that they cannot ignore. And sure enough, during the week, Albo's declared that your super is in fact a national asset and should be used for nation building projects, not for your own personal use in your retirement. In health, and I hope you sent this to Dr. Dan so you can get the pre-bunks going.
He's too busy attacking Judy Williman after I uploaded all of her shorts from our interview on Rumble. He's probably busy doing all that.
Well, share the love, I suppose.
Yeah, that's it. Well, he had Robert Clancy. I mean, Robert gave a reply, so we'll see if Judy has time to respond to Dan and have the proper public debate, because I guess what Dan's after, and Judy's saying that this is one of the problems in regards to her fight in this space for 22 decades is that is the opportunity to debate. So maybe Dan and Judy and Dr. Clancy and Philip Altman can all sit around the table and have a good debate.
You'd host that, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I'd give that a crack. 100%.
Isn't that a nice idea? Yep.
Yeah, mate.
And I do remember once losing a bet and being told by the person I lost to, just a piece of advice: never fight out of your weight class. So Dan, you might be picking on respected researchers that really do have a better grounding in the subject than you do. Just a thought. Anyway, what was I saying? Australian perinatal deaths, so deaths around the time of birth, so stillbirths, babies that die, in the immediate period after birth, have spiked for some reason since 2021, and in most cases, the experts don't know why. So I'll talk about that story.
I'm baffled. Who could
Baffled.
climate change?
And
Of
a
course, Bruce.
spin-off, given my recent status as a grey-haired elder gentleman, I'm going to look at another one of those injections that they think all kids should get at birth because there's some religious or evolutionary defect in them when they're born, and that's the vitamin K shot. So I'm going to do a deep dive in it, and I did because I actually had a personal interest in this over the last few weeks and was asked my opinion. So I'm going to look at, okay, why do we think it's a good idea to give all neonates a vitamin K shot on the day of their birth, which, by the way, is what the experts say. All babies should get it. And there's interesting conjunction of stories in the media. On the one hand, there's a story that says vitamin K shots have been linked to an increased rate of leukemia in children. And on the other side, the ABC saying experts are worried that kids aren't getting the shots quite as much as they used to.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's because I mean they're really pumping it in the media at the moment, aren't they? And when I was putting that little bit of research together about the circumcision thing, the observations that neonatal clotting factors, prothrombin, vitamin K dependent, peak around day 8, which is a real separate physiological point about bleeding risk timing, not evidence about cancer causations. So yeah, we even talked about that with vitamin K about so it's clotting agent, isn't it? So.
Well, the Flying Doc's going to do a deep dive on that today.
All right, good on you, Flying Doc. Let's go and hear it.
And then we've got another recurring theme on the channel, which is that diversity divides. Doesn't produce a harmonious, rich, vibrant community. It produces a divided and suspicious community. And we've got yet another attack from Berlin, the home of the Islamic vehicle attack, because there's been another one. And the answer apparently is that they need to put up physical barriers, diversity bollards, they're called. And to finish out, there's also been a fair bit of media this week about that dreadful Australian doctor, Dr Jihad, who went over to, I think it was Syria, and acted as a doctor for ISIS. And the reason it's come up is because he's recently been found to be not dead. And as an Australian citizen, he'd like to come home. And, of course, this has been roundly criticised by politicians and others. So I'm just going to ask, I've also been overseas, in fact, a very similar part of the world, carrying a gun and wearing a uniform and acting as a doctor. So how come I got back into the country, but there's resistance to him coming back? What was different about what we did? So well, that will come up as well. Righto, updates.
Right, just before you do crack on, I was going to say, because you, I mean, you would have gone to university a long time ago. So look, I get this point here, but I think Bruce, Bruce's your position in regards to circumcision come about not through university, but through lived experience later on in life. Because you used to be, I guess, in support of it, but you've changed since, haven't you? So, and yeah.
I never used to think anything about it except that, you know, it was a healthy thing to do.
Yeah, okay. So,
when I was falling back on what I was taught, not on what I was thought. And that's true of so many things in my medical career. You can just go with what you're told. You can learn it. You can front up to the exams, get a tick in the box. You can keep saying it for the rest of your career. Read the script, write the script. But I started questioning a lot of things, and that's one of the things I questioned. So that's where I'm based on.
In the last 5 years, I've questioned a hell of a lot more, Bruce. But anyway, and you're right. 1984, punk offences taken, not given them. That's one of your classic lines, Bruce. Because when Bruce isn't offended, like there's not really be hard to offend you, I reckon, Bruce. But that's been one of your little sayings for a while too. Offences given, offences taken, not given. So there you go. All good.
You're not quite right, because as I've mentioned, anytime I go to an official function or training package and they do the welcome to country, which does not include my ancestors, I say, hang on, that's offensive. That doesn't include my ancestors. So you can offend me.
Oh, you can offend you. Yeah, okay. But in certain circumstances, that's okay. That's all good.
You can offend me by acting unethically is what you can do.
There you go. There you go.
Righto. Gulf War update. So the US is continuing bombing Iranian targets for about the last 10 days. And Iran has fired back, of course, and they've been firing back at US bases in the region. And my understanding is they're inflicting very serious damage. So one of the goals of the Iranians is to get the Americans out of the Persian Gulf, full stop. And that would help everybody. Well, help everybody except Israel. So they've concentrated on bases that are close to Iran, and now they're pushing further back. So they've seriously damaged American bases in Jordan and Saudi Arabia. And as you know, American ships cannot transit the Strait of Hormuz and into the Gulf. And indeed, it's becoming increasingly difficult for them to operate aircraft out of the bases in the Gulf. So they've moved 1,000 kilometres away back to western edge of Saudi Arabia and Jordan. And of course, the next step's Israel. Once they get pushed out of those countries, it's going to be an Israeli-US war, which of course it has been from the start. All right. Now, what's happened with these attacks has been, because they're attacking bases now, the Iranians, we're told, there's been a handful of American servicemen killed. In fact, I think it was 4 in the last week. And Trump has reacted in the same way that the Nazis would react in Paris if a partisan shot an SS officer. The Nazis would round up 100 random Parisians and shoot them. So it was a classic response to irregular warfare. And Trump's basically said this. Every time Iran kills an American soldier, they will pay for that many times over. So that's the current position. Now, Trump clearly has nobody in his administration who understands history or reads or is capable of passing on to him the benefits of history. So I'd refer you to philosopher George Santayana, who said, those who cannot learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And I base a huge amount of my opinions in life on what I've read about what's gone beforehand. And you can go all the way back to the Bible if you like. I heard Chris Martinson say, like me, it was amazing. I watched a podcast of his recently, and he's a economics futurist analyst from the States who I highly recommend. And he said basically, once he worked out that evil existed, he thought, I better read the Bible. So he started reading the Bible. And I thought, actually, that rings a huge bell. So and he said, having read the Bible or having started reading it, he said, nothing's new. Humanity's been doing this shit for centuries. And obviously it has. Outcomes don't change because humans don't change. That's the basic thing.
We're flawed. We're flawed and broken. Absolutely.
It's a very Catholic view you got there. Fallen.
Eastern Orthodox, mate.
Oops. So the point is, history is really important. And I have literally hundreds of history books in my bookcases. So I'm reading a history book while everyone else is watching My Kitchen Rules Out of Here in the Jungle at First Sight. So they're getting their opinions issued to them by the mainstream media. I'm getting my opinions formed by my knowledge of reading hundreds of history books, which told me about what's happened in the past and what were the results. So George Santayana agreed, history is incredibly important. And I started this by saying Trump, by what he's trying to do, is clearly ignorant of history. If he thinks I can respond, if 4 American servicemen get killed and I bomb Tehran flat, I win, which is the sort of answer. He's ignorant of history, or he's not listening to anybody in his cabinet who does know history. So here's a few examples. So Vietnam War, which, by the way, the US lost. The US lost the Vietnam War. It was roughly a 10-year war. 58,000 American servicemen were killed, and somewhere around 1 to 3 million Vietnamese were killed. So a vastly disproportionate death ratio between the two sides. And the North Vietnamese leader Ho Chi Minh remarked upon that. And he said, you will kill 10 of us, we will kill 1 of you, but in the end, you will tire of it first. This is what's going to happen in Iraq. Doesn't matter how badly you hurt the Iranians, the Americans will give up first. It's happened throughout history.
Yeah. Technology is a little bit different these days, though, isn't it? It can become the drone wars or something, but wow, that figure is astonishing. 2 million Vietnamese civilians. Wow.
Yeah. And yeah, technology changes, humans don't. Doesn't matter. And of course, technology is a two-edged sword. The Iranians are better at drone warfare than the Americans are.
They've invested in drones while the Yanks invested in many other things.
Carriers. Yeah. All right, here's another example. So the Iraq War, which I participated in, another war that the US lost against an asymmetric inferior enemy. Americans lost 4,400 servicemen in that war. Hard to say how many Iraqis were killed, estimates between 200,000 and 600,000. And hard to split them into civilian versus military, because insurgencies, basically, everybody's a civilian or looks like one. So,
a bit like Gaza at the moment, isn't it? A bit like Gaza, isn't it?
Gaza is another great example. You know, the Israelis have bombed it flat, but they still don't control it. So the Iraq War was lost despite the numbers favouring the Americans easily. You got the Afghan War, which again I participated in. Another war that America lost, same sort of war. A first world high technology power could not defeat a low tech insurgent enemy. The Americans lost 3,500 soldiers in Afghanistan, and the Afghans lost, who knows, 100, 150, 200,000. And 10 years later, the Americans left. So it's not about how many the other side you kill. It's about who can tolerate the losses, who can stomach the losses more. And yet here we are. Trump's idea is that, okay, you killed 4 of ours, we're going to bomb yours flat. Doesn't work like you should do. Listen to someone in your administration who's a scholar of world and military history.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, well, he obviously doesn't have those people surrounding him. Again, like, you know, the people that he gets surrounded, obviously the warmongers and people. That's all about the money of replenishing military arms, Bruce. You know, there's good money in that, apparently, from what I hear. Yeah.
Good business if you build a $3, $4, $5 million missile, and a success is when you blow it up. Got to build another one.
Yep. Good business model, isn't it?
Good work if you can get it.
Now,
here's another quote from modern day highly experienced war correspondent and analyst. That's Michael Yon, and he's wont to say, wars grow, then they grow out of control. And you might remember the Iran War, Gulf War, started as a 5-day war to change the leadership. We're now, I think, 4 months in. We've replaced one Khomeini with another, and nothing else has changed. It's not working. It's growing. And currently, it's growing out of control. The growing out of control bit is that it's now spread to the Red Sea. So this week, the Houthis, the Iranian proxies of Yemen, have made good on their threat to close the other strategic waterway there, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. And by the way, a year or two ago, they did this. So they were at war with Saudi Arabia, and as part of that, they were interdicting shipping in the Red Sea with shore-based missiles and drones. The Americans said, we'll stop that, and with the help of many navies, the Americans, the British, the Germans, etc., they put a massive naval force in the Red Sea, which made no difference. They merely exhausted all of their missiles using $5 million air defense interceptors to shoot down $40,000 drones. And in the end, they ran out of missiles and they left. They left the Red Sea. They were kicked out by persistence on the basis of the Houthis, their low-tech adversaries. And so when you close the Bab el-Mandeb, you close the bottom entry exit to the Red Sea. Now, I thought the framing was interesting as well, because you will note when it's the bad guys that we're talking about in the media, they don't have allies, they have proxies. And they don't have governments, they have regimes. You might have noticed that. So the Houthis are an Iranian proxy and the Iranians have a regime, whereas the Americans and the Israelis, they have allies and administrations or governments. So the very words used to describe them are already loaded and charged. So here's what happened. So previously the Strait of Hormuz has been closed effectively for 3 or 4 months. And now they've closed, if you see the circle at the bottom, the Bab el-Mandeb. So that's the entry exit to the southern part of the Red Sea. And that's really important for a number of reasons. One is that the Saudis have been avoiding the Strait of Hormuz closure by shipping a fair bit of oil across country and exporting it through the Red Sea, through their port of Yanbu. So they've avoided about half the losses due to the blockade by doing that. And the other thing is, the northern end of the Red Sea is the Suez Canal. And an enormous amount of world trade, so trade from Europe going around to Asia, goes through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal to avoid having to do the big loop around Africa, which takes longer and costs more. So if the Houthis have closed off the entry and exit to the Bab el-Mandeb, they stop all of that commercial container shipping traffic from Asia to Europe. And of course, we've got a global world. So if that shipping route is affected, then it bleeds over into us as well. Then the other thing is, okay, the Saudis can't get their oil out through that pipeline bypass and go south and out to the rest of the world. So they're actually forced to turn their ships north and take them out through the Suez Canal. But that's a problem because the Suez Canal can't take all the large ships. So even if your shipping originates in the Suez and the Red Sea, you can't put a 500,000 barrel oil tanker through the Suez. You can only get smaller ships through. And even if you do, if you want to send a ship oil to us, Asia, they've got to go all the way around Africa, which takes longer and costs more. And as I said, I think the Trump administration really lacks philosophers and scholars and historians because, again, Trump needs to know what the Arabic translation of Bab el-Mandeb is. So that's the choke point there at the bottom of the Red Sea. Well, the Arabic translation is that is the Gate of Tears.
How apt.
So you might have thought that would ring an alarm bell because the Houthis have said all along, if you keep this shit up, we're going to close the strait again. And they did. They did it a year or two ago, and the Americans, the Europeans, the Germans already worked out they can't open it with their navy. Same as they can't open the Strait of Hormuz with their navy because there's just too many drones coming at them. So same. So yeah, what a pity there are no historians and scholars in the Trump administration. Sorry, the Trump regime. And so, as I said, if you can't use the Suez Canal, not only can you not get the Saudi oil out, but all trade has to detour a long, long way around Africa. So it takes longer and it costs more. So that puts the cost of all trade up. And even if the oil tankers could get out, they're going to take twice as long. And there's only so many tankers. So if it takes twice as long to deliver a load, it's only getting delivered to your country at half the rate, which means you're going to get shortages in a just-in-time world. So this is a very serious thing. And as I mentioned, you can't just turn your ships right when they leave Saudi Arabia and send your oil tankers up through the Suez Canal because it's too small for modern ships. So if you look on that graphic, at the top, you've got what's called a Suezmax tanker. So that's the maximum size tanker that can go through the Suez. And that's up to about 200,000 tons and carrying 1 million barrels of oil. But a lot of the oil that comes out of the Gulf is carried by ships that are 2 to 4 times bigger. VLCCs, very large crude carriers, and ULCCs, ultra large crude carriers. They can't go through. They can't go through the Suez. Yeah, there's not enough draft. So
500,000 tons. Wow. Oh no, 500 million tons. 550 million tons. Holy Dually.
No, 550,000 tonnes, so they're 500,000
Five
tonnes. They're
million,
big,
500,000. That was right to start with. Yeah.
they're big ships. So it's not a simple solution. With the southern exit to the Red Sea blocked, that adds seriously to the problems that we already had.
Mm.
So putting all those things together, you might understand why all of a sudden the media started talking about fuel supply problems again in Australia, including we could be forced to ration fuel thing within weeks. Nobody could have predicted this, Mark.
No, not at all.
Nobody could have predicted it. And one of the great gifts and also curses of us fortune tellers is that we know what's going to happen, but we think it's going to happen sooner than it actually happens. So for a long time, it looks like we're wrong. We know it's going to happen. We just can't tell you when. And we usually say it's going to happen soon and it takes longer. So, yep, it's going to happen soon and it takes longer.
Yeah.
So
unfortunately, we've been let down over decades by all political parties. If we do have the capacity to refine our own stuff here. We have the technology, we have the resources, all that sort of stuff. But our Liberal, Labor, Greens governments have screwed us over for the many, many decades.
But where would we get the raw materials, Mark? It's not like there's 100 years worth of oil in Australia just sitting in the ground.
No, not at all, hey? Not at all.
Where would we get the refineries? And not like, a decade ago we had 10 of them and we closed 8 of them down. Oh, yes, right. We did do that, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
At least we didn't blow them up like the Port Augusta power station, or maybe we did. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Good on you, Pete. It's good to see One Nation members of the Legislative Council starting to give it back to Mallee and Labor, and lots of social media coming out of them at the moment, which is good to see.
Now, you notice in that story, it says that we could be forced to ration fuel within weeks. Within weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So that prompted me to, again, have a look at Last Drop, which is the website I've started using, which tracks the in-country, so the onshore fuel resources in Australia. And it's actually gone backwards a lot just since last week. So I've listed there, in order of the volume of consumption, the 3 most important hydrocarbon fuels in this country: diesel, petrol, jet fuel. So approximately 4 diesel for 2 petrol for 1 jet fuel is Australia's consumption pattern. So our diesel stocks today are 26 days onshore. Last week it was 30. So it's gone backwards a lot.
A week.
Petrol is 29 days. That's gone back a week. It's gone back completely for the whole 7 days since we spoke. And jet fuel's gone backwards 4 days. So we now have less than a month of total supply onshore of what Australia needs. That's why they're starting to talk about rationing within weeks. Now, obviously, that's in country. That's what we've got here in Australia. We do have ships coming to us, but the problem is they're not here yet. What if they don't arrive? What if Japan rings up the owner of the diesel tanker that's coming to us from wherever its Asian refinery is and says, whatever the Aussies are paying you, we'll pay you twice as much for that diesel? What happens? The ship turns around. That's what happens.
Yeah. How many people in Japan compared to Australia?
It's over 100 million.
Yeah, so 5 times our population.
So what we've got in the bank, what food you've got in your cupboard equivalent, is less than a month of everything.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm sure Albo's got it all under control.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yep. 122 million, so they've got 6 times more. So they're going to be they would pick up the phone and go, you know what? Australia's only got 27 million, 28 million people. We've got 120. We'll pay you. We'll pay you that money.
Yeah. They don't care how many people. It's like, we'll pay you more. And then maybe the ship owner says to the Aussies, well, the Japs are offering, $5 a litre. What are you offering? And then the Aussies go, okay, we'll offer 6. And, you get a bidding war. That's how much. So if the ship hasn't docked and unloaded, there's some uncertainty about whether we'll really get that. Particularly, over the next few weeks as things get really spicy.
Mm.
Now, if you want to do a deep dive into all of that, my favourite podcaster, Chris Martinson, who, as I've said, is the only podcaster, analyst, futurist that I pay money for. I pay, I think, about $40 a month to access his site. He was recently, and it's well worth it, absolutely well worth it. He was recently interviewed by Tucker Carlson, and they went into the supply and economics of liquid fuels around the world and the effects of the Gulf. So if you want to flesh out what I've been saying, do that little search there and have a look for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I might add, I've had a question mark over Tucker ever since he obviously wimped out, going back how many years, when the Trump election was clearly fraudulent and stolen. And instead of him coming out and saying, no, I'm not, this is BS, yeah, I can see what happened, he actually kept his mouth shut at the start, although he then did detach himself, divorce himself from mainstream media, and he now runs his own very successful private television channel. So I guess at some point you got to forgive people for being slower to wake up than I was. But take it just as a single point in time. That is a fabulous interview, which explains all of those supply economics that I've just talked about.
Yep. Sharp minds.
Righto. On to the ever popular Not Easy Being Green segment. And oh noes, more bad news for the climate warriors, because as Joe Nova's blog reports, and you won't see this on the ABC, by the way.
Of course not.
The people no longer trust Australia's premier scientific body, the CSIRO, about climate change, about climate, about green energy, etc. And they don't support net zero either. So to read the text, barely 28% of Australians believe the experts at our premier scientific establishment. It's a sad state. The CSIRO have burned through 60 years of goodwill and scientific branding, and haven't so many institutions done that in recent years. They have trashed very, very long and proud reputations by selling out to the current thing politically. They may have invented Aerogard, WLAN, wireless local area network, and broadcast the Apollo 11 moon landing, but most of the country doesn't trust them on net zero. They make pronouncements about the complex science of climate change, but even with a media parroting the climate propaganda on their behalf, the unwashed masses can still see through the hypocrisy, the jargon, and the biodegradable shopping bags.
Yep.
A generation of great scientific work used up like cheap branding.
Yep. Or for the climate cult and any other sort of cult that's been renewable cult, the whole lot. Yep, it's all politicized. Yeah, we're no true science.
They sold out.
Well, so you can't question the science, when big, massive corporations like Google can change algorithms, and then Melissa Fleming can be the only sole source of information for climate change, and the UN, what hope have the CSIRO got? They want funding still?
I thought they owned the science.
We own the science.
And the story notes this, which is a key reason for this. Trust in science took a savage beating during the pandemic. It sure did. They went so far over the top with lies that became increasingly obvious that a lot of people woke up and went, no, sorry. Okay. They over-egged the pudding, Mark.
Yep, as they've done with many other things. People are waking up.
And this might be a good time to talk about that phrase, over-egging the pudding.
Yes, we've used it quite a bit.
So the idiom over-egging the pudding originated in mid-19th century England, so in the 1800s, with the earliest known print citation in Robert Smith Surtees' 1845 novel. The phrase is derived from the current culinary practice of adding too many eggs to a pudding, which would ruin the dish by making it dense or heavy. It is widely believed to reference the specific cooking traditions of Yorkshire, where local farmers use the expression to warn against overcomplicating or exaggerating something. So that's over egging. So I'm going to try and slip in one of these. Where did that come from? Each week or whatever.
Yeah, you started doing a bit of that with the words, of the play on words and stuff, and you were bringing up a few of those, and then it dropped off a little bit.
Timing, Mark. Timing. All right. Now, here's more bad news for the climate warriors, because it turns out that people don't want home batteries unless someone else pays for them.
Isn't it funny how that's all worked over the last few years? It's like, oh, if it's subsidized, I'll get it. It's a bit like EVs and all this sort of stuff.
So here's what the story said. Monthly installations of household batteries have tumbled after the federal government tightened the criteria for subsidies. Installation rates for household batteries plunged by more than 70% in the wake of changes to tighten a multi-billion-dollar taxpayer-funded subsidy scheme. So given that the people don't want these things, why is the government splashing around taxpayer money to encourage them to do it? Because the people are the taxpayers, right? Circular.
Yep. That's right.
Now, at least they did say here taxpayer funded rather than government funded. So I guess there is that.
Nice comment there, Lily. The only thing that is net zero is what's between the climate cult's ears and our bureaucrats and politicians class lately. Yep, you're right.
And as I mentioned before, the term net is a fudge factor. It's either zero or it's not, because something's got to fill in when it's not.
Yeah, that's right.
You can't do a 1 hour scuba dive with a net 5 litres a minute air supply if there are 3 periods in it where you get nothing for 10 minutes.
Good luck with that.
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's got to be continuous, not net.
Yep. Unless you're one of those deep sea divers, free divers, you might be all right, but most people would just see you later, alligator. Oh, look at those greens there.
Yep, few greens, although oil being up is a green, which might not always be regarded as good.
No, that's right. So true. So
this week, we got oil up a lot. We got silver up a bit, and everything else, pretty much flat. So, yes. In fact, oil's up 25% in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Just nudged $100. And as we discussed previously, it's not just the price of the oil that matters, because the oil is the input to the refinery. What actually matters to you and I is the price of the output. The tanker puts oil in at one end of the refinery, and we get diesel and petrol out the other end. And as you would have noticed, diesel and petrol prices went up more than oil prices did, and they're going to keep going up because we have shortages. We have shortages because refinery supply is down around the world. There are damaged refineries in the Persian Gulf. There are locked-in refineries in the Persian Gulf. And Russia, which is a very large refiner of petroleum products, has had about a third of their refineries knocked out by Ukrainian drone strikes in the last couple of weeks. So the oil price, not only is it manipulated, but it's not actually the most relevant thing. The petrol price or the diesel price is really what matters.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep, 1800. It's been a little while since gold was 1800 there, 1984.
Yep, same. And just understand that it's not the gold that's gone up in value, it's the dollar that's gone down in value. Gold just sits there. It doesn't do anything.
Yep.
If you need more dollars to buy the gold, it means the dollars aren't buying as much. Not that the gold has changed. The dollar has changed. And by the way, I zipped over to South Australia over the weekend, and I paused in front of the ice cream cabinet at OTR at Bordertown and looked at the price of the pine lime splice, still in the $3 something range. Ice cream hasn't changed. Yes, it has actually. It's got worse. It's got smaller and worse. But the price has gone up 20 times over the course of my lifetime.
Crazy stuff, eh?
And fun fact, if you look at the price of houses priced in gold rather than dollars, it's actually been going down over time. And it should. With technology, the price of anything should go down over time because you get better at making it. So the fact that it's gone up rather than down tells you the money has really suffered. That's something that we've talked about many times.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Jace, I see you, Jace, and clearly the drugs have worn off, but I'm not flashing it up. But I see you, Jace. I see you.
And I'm on full screen here, so I'm not seeing the comments. So I'm protected.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. Related financial story.
Censorship is rife on our channel.
Yeah, censorship strike. So related story that repeatedly comes up on the channel, and that is that our government is broke and bloated, and they simply will not be able to keep their hands out of your pocket, increasingly so as time goes on. This is called the late extractive phase of a dying empire. We saw it in the Roman Empire, et cetera, et cetera. So when the government and the bureaucracy has grown really large and really inefficient and really non-productive, all it can do is stick its hand in the pockets of the citizens more and more and steal their stuff to keep it going. Can't improve productivity because it's too big and governments are counterproductive. So get ready for more and more theft on the part of government. And I've said before, they are coming for your super. Your super is probably Australia's single largest pot of gold, and governments will not be able to keep their hands off it. And sure enough, this week, Albo's come out and flagged that, if you didn't already know it, because he's come out and said that your super isn't really yours. It's really a national asset that should be used for nation-building projects. Not there to pay for your retirement, when you're ready to wind things down, stop working and just enjoy your caravan and your four-wheel drive. No, that's not what super's for. The super that you were forced to save across your working life because they took it out of your pay packet without your consent and wouldn't give it back to you till you retired, that's super. Okay, that super has now grown to a pot so big that the government is just salivating over it and cannot ignore it. So here's a little story
socialist communists be like, Albo. Yep. Showing your true colours. Comrade Albanese. Comrade Prime Minister.
If you thought your super belonged to you, think again. The Prime Minister sees Australia's retirement savings as something that can be used to advance the nation's interests, telling the Australian Financial Review and Visy Superannuation Roundtable there is a real potential to see these funds as a national asset. A national asset. That's a dangerous way to think about money that Australians have spent a lifetime earning. We've already seen changes to the tax rules, and now the Prime Minister is openly describing Australians' retirement savings as a national asset that should help deliver national objectives. And that should concern everyone. Opposition leader Alex Taylor says Australians deserve answers about exactly what the government will do.
What is his plan with Australian super? Is he going to follow the lead that we've seen from Wayne Swan in recent days? Superannuation is Australians' money. It's not the government's money. It's not union officials' money. It's Australians' money, and we will always respect that.
Just on a side note, it's almost irrelevant hearing from a leader of the Liberal Party now, isn't it? It would have almost made, with the polling the way it is, Pauline Hanson could have said the same, but probably would have had more guts to it.
Yeah, and I feel a little bit sorry for Angus Taylor because he is a reasonable Conservative and he got a hospital pass. So in football, that's where somebody passes the ball to you a microsecond before the fullback, who's twice your size, collides with you. So yeah, he was handed the keys to a sinking ship, if I could mix my metaphors. But at least some of the things he's saying are right. But way too late for the Liberals. You've been dead to me since COVID. I don't care what you say after that. Not listening. But at least he has come out and said, your private super is your private money. It is not government money, and it's not for public purposes. It's for private purposes.
Mm.
Now, of course, Albo's just going to do it anyway. You know, the old whatever, we'll just do it anyway, as we know the government these days.
Yep. And they've obviously screwed, young, families trying to get, use their super for SMSFs and all that. They're coming from them in that regard as well. So, it's, trying to get it wherever they can get their grubby little fingers on.
Yep, they're going to hoover up every dollar they can from anywhere, including sacred things. The family home, they'll probably capital gains tax that unrealised, and they'll steal money wherever they can. This is what happens as empires fail because they've grown too big and too inefficient.
Yep, okay, socialistic.
Now, here's a translation. Brace yourself. The super raid means that Florence is stuck again. And as a reminder, the Snowy Hydro pumped hydraulic battery project is now years late and 20x over budget. What started off as a $2 billion nation building project is now an undelivered $42 billion project, and that's just the current. Do you want your super going into that failing enterprise, or would you rather use it yourself to go on a holiday to Cairns towing your caravan?
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty much what happens. And just on a side note there, Bruce, most people watching would know that they did the whole Oz alert today, and I was doing a bit of research on it, and I had my phone off and put it on whatever, and there's been lots of talk about it. I mean, obviously apparently the signal is a one-way signal from the towers, and it uses that, doesn't go anywhere. There were some concerns raised about obviously domestic violence victims where they might have a secret phone stashed, and all of a sudden, even on silent mode or aeroplane mode, it might go off and all that. From all accounts and purposes, I hear was a flop, but it was bantied to be about $10 million, and it blew out to $112 million. So again, here's another project that saying this is how much it was, and it 10x'd in that period of time.
I'm guessing it's not done yet because today was the first ever trial of the tech.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And a number of people messaged me and said, what do you think of this? And my answer was, I don't think there's anything immediately sinister in it. And some people said, I'm putting my phone in a Faraday bag, for an hour and so forth, so I can't receive it. They'll be downloading things onto my phone, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the thing. If they had malicious intent immediately with the test, they wouldn't have announced it. They'd have just done it.
Well, they would have done it by now anyway. If they had the capacity to do any of the stuff that people are fearful about, whether it be sending signals or sending data back, if they had the capacity, they're doing it for bloody months before this would have come out, right? They've already had the technology. They could access every part of your life through these things. As we know, you're talking, all of a sudden on Facebook, there's something in your feed. You might be talking about a product, and all of a sudden it's in your Facebook feed, unless you turn off a whole heap of settings on your phone. I mean, they already have that capacity. So, yeah, I don't think it was as nefarious and doom and gloom as what people said. But at the end of the day, who knows what they're up to?
Now, obviously, in the future, they're going to use it to push propaganda at us. That's a separate issue. But in terms of, is this immediately poisoning your phone? I don't think so. And let's face it, if it was, and you managed to duck it by putting your phone in a Faraday bag, they're going to do it again tomorrow without warning you. They will sweep up people who avoided it. And you mentioned technology and tracking and so forth. Like I said, I went over to Adelaide over the weekend, just a quick flying visit. And I previously talked in the show about how modern cars, which have the automatic emergency services function, so if you crash your car, it dials 911 for you. And I thought, no, I don't want that, because that means they're tracking where you are all the time. If they know that you're here when you crashed, they know where you were before you crashed. And I thought, yeah, okay, that's another thing I don't want. And I was very pleased to see that my 2024 D-Max doesn't have that module, because I Googled how to disconnect the module and they said there isn't one in the car. So, and it's a 10-year-old design, so fair enough. Here's what's interesting though. So my car does have GPS. I don't use Android phone connectivity. I just use GPS on the dash. So it's not my phone talking to the GPS. It's just standalone GPS. So I drove over to Adelaide and I stopped in the Murray Mallee. And my first trip was, I put in the coordinates to drive to, was my first location. When I left there, I put my next stop in, which was in Adelaide. And when I push, destination, I get a menu of choices. And at the top of my next choice was my destination in Adelaide. So it predicted from where my first stop was in the Mallee. Then when I got to Adelaide, the next morning, I drove down to a friend's place at Warradale. So I pushed in, plot my route, and the top option was that place.
Wow.
Then I left there and drove up to the shooting range, because I shot with the Historic Military Club. And when I went to put in that saved location, it was at the top already. So my car, which isn't Android Auto, is not talking to my phone, it's just the GPS in the dash, already knew what my itinerary was from previous times.
So saved a little bit of a history. So you've clearly been to those destinations previously, and it's just mapped them. It's just kept them in some sort of memory file or something like that in there. Yeah, I predicted it.
Assume that Big Brother is watching you all the time, unless you take specific precautions to avoid it. Unless you're doing the low-tech Taliban thing where you're just talking across the fence or sending a message that's written. Assume that you are being tracked at all times, even when you don't think you are.
Yeah, Philip says it's probably just a memory chip, like anything else. Is like even on your phone or whatever. Like if you've pre-programmed something in the past, it could be as simple as something like that. But yeah, no, it's good advice. Absolutely good advice, though.
Yep. Well, it knew where I was to predict where I'm going next. So there's a couple of points I'm making.
Yeah, 100%.
All right.
Interesting.
So where was I there? I was saying that one of the reasons why Albo's sniffing around your super is because there's blowouts on yet more government projects, probably snowy hydro. And I'm a bit of an optimist, so I'm just going to hope that our wise rulers will see sense and just send our money over to China for Chinese wind turbines instead.
Yeah, isn't that where most of our money went over the last few decades, to help China come out of stop being a third world country? Isn't that all part of the Lima Declaration and other initiatives, to screw over our manufacturing, because we're such a great first world country that we had to help China out, and now they pretty much control us in many, many aspects.
Now, AWOL Stu's obviously been looking at my itinerary history as well there.
Not end of a Chinese message. Yeah, good on you. Yep.
Anyway, Albo wants your money to unstick Florence and also to buy more Chinese wind turbines, because it's good for the country, don't you know?
Yep.
Now, I have a forlorn hope, Mark. Wouldn't it be great if Australia was blessed with its own energy resources? If we had reserves of oil in the ground, if we had reserves of coal in the ground, so we could actually be self-sufficient, wouldn't that be great if we had those things?
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
That's right, we do, Mark. We've got 100 years of 100 years of oil and 1,000 years of coal at known reserves. There's almost certainly a lot more than that. But we're not allowed to use it because it's dirty. We are allowed to send it to China so they can use it and then sell us our shitty wind turbines back. But you and I can't have it because it's dirty.
Yep.
Ah, well, such is life.
Yeah, well, we know that Dan Andrews and Albo love their little flying visits over to the CCP with Jinping. So I'm pretty sure they're lining up their future post politics, which already Dan Andrews already doing, and still dining very well with billionaires.
Now, by the way, speaking of Dan Alert, can you just tag him on this?
Oh, he's already pre-bunked you, mate. Like he's already pre-bunked you on the vitamin K one that you're going to do. So he's already been already hot on the off the press with he's spammed me and grokked you already as a pre-bunk when you did your intro for the as you know that he does. He likes to pre-bunk you, Bruce.
Perhaps I'll just skip over the story then, because obviously I'm wrong.
Well, that's right. I mean, Dan already knows what's best, doesn't he? So, yeah.
Now, there is a saying which is that the left doesn't want to contradict what you say. They want to shut down what you say. So I'm starting to wonder whether Dan might be a bit of a lefty,
You think?
All right. So a couple of health updates. So an update on last week's false report where the ABC said that Senator Roberts falsely reported that the magic holy shots cause miscarriages. Remember that? They made a false story about a false story.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, the mainstream media is not as connected and coordinated as we might think, because the advertiser had this story during the week. So the advertiser says that stillbirth rates in Australia are at record high levels, up 25% to 8.7 per thousand since 2017-18. So that was the story.
I'm just going to blame all the anti-vaxxers, Bruce. That's what they're blaming. That's what they'll blame it on.
Well, I'm blaming the vaxxers. Now, the story notes that the cause of this rise in perinatal deaths is unknown, and therefore the experts are baffled. They don't know what's causing it.
Of course they are.
Now, I think they don't know what's causing for it because they aren't looking for it. And this report says that. It says that the state's low autopsy rate is leaving grieving families without answers. So they're not looking. Okay, how can an autopsy help you determine whether a stillbirth or a neonatal death was related to the magic holy shots? Well, you might find spike proteins in the heart, for example. That's how you would know. But they don't look for it. They don't do autopsies at all in most cases. And if they do, they're not looking for spike proteins in places that could have caused it. So no wonder they're baffled.
Well, they didn't do it even with when the deaths started coming in according to our Dean database, the adverse events database of Australia. They didn't even do autopsies on a lot of those.
They didn't have to, Mark. They just redefined the normal, so they weren't excess anymore.
Yeah, exactly right.
All right. Now, having said that, they did slip this little error into the text there, which sort of gave the game away. So it said that stillbirth rates have increased substantially for babies born to mums aged 24 and younger since 2021.
Well, what happened around that time, Bruce?
What happened in 2021?
I wonder.
It wasn't COVID, because that was COVID-19, you remember? Remember that?
Yes, and that was on fire supposedly through 2020. So but something else come about though, Bruce.
What happened in 2021 is I got fired from medicine for refusing to take part in the experiment. That's what happened.
Yeah, me too. November 2021. So see you later.
The feature of 2021 was this coerced experimental vax campaign. The feature wasn't a COVID epidemic, it was a COVID injection epidemic. So I thought that sort of belled the cat a bit there, and that's another topic I've got to cover, and I'm belling the cat.
Belling the cat, yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So
who could have predicted?
The story says there was a substantial increase since 2021, and Sir Austin Bradford Hill would call that temporality. Something happened in 2021 just after something else happened. That's suggestive of causality. Unfortunately, Sir Austin Bradford Hill was not available tonight, so we couldn't get him on the show.
Had other plans.
Yes, he was unavoidably detained, I believe. And I've had that. That's happened to me. Trust me. All right. Now, regarding the magic holy shots, I've previously said that one of the reasons I believe they were so desperate that the mRNA shots could not fail. And you remember, they extinguished all other technologies. AstraZeneca got rubbed out. You couldn't have a traditional vaccine. You had to have the Pfizer or the Moderna mRNA shot. The other sorts of shots, the traditional stuff that we tested for decades, that was no good. And in fact, if you did manage to develop one, like who's that professor in Adelaide?
Yes. Zelensky, no.
Wasn't Zelensky, yeah.
Nikolai Petrovsky.
So Petrovsky actually developed a conventional protein-based COVID shot. And they nuked his study by requiring that the placebo group still got the mRNA vax. So get that. You're running a study. You give half of your shot to one group, and the placebo group, you don't give anything. That's how you do a randomized controlled trial. Except the state government, the South Australian state government said, oh, you don't worry about that test. You have to have your mRNA shot. So the placebo group got mRNA, not nothing.
That's right.
Yep. So they had to extinguish all options. And the reason I think they had to extinguish all options is they were really keen that mRNA would be a great platform for future use. And it has been. And as I've said, they've recently released the first mRNA flu vax for the current season. So it's not the traditional old stuff. It's the mRNA platform. So let me just reiterate what worries me about the mRNA platform. So first off, it's the delivery system. The way they get the mRNA into your body is they package it up in a lipid nanoparticle, little fatty globule. That's how they deliver the mRNA to you. Now, the problem with that is the lipid nanoparticle is known to be pro-inflammatory, and inflammation causes disease. Most modern chronic diseases have an inflammatory nature. So they wanted to inject you with an inflammatory delivery system. So even if there was nothing inside that lipid nanoparticle, even if it was empty, the delivery particle itself has a potential to cause disease. So I don't like that. Next thing is, assuming that they did use that delivery system to deliver the payload, the mRNA, into your body, the mRNA is a blueprint that tells your cells how to make a certain protein, in this case, the spike protein. But there's no off switch. You've just given it the plans. Your body just starts making it. There's no way of saying just make one copy of this, then self-destruct. They told us it would self-destruct. They said the mRNA is very short-lived. And that's generally true for mRNA, except they changed it. They changed one of the atoms in the DNA strand. They replaced what's called a uracil with a pseudo-uracil. And they did that deliberately to make it long-lasting. It wasn't an accident. They deliberately made the mRNA long-lasting after they told you it was short-lasting, and gave you that. And finally, there have been some suggestions that the RNA can reverse transcribe back into the DNA, which is your genetic blueprint. Makes you a GMO. It changes your DNA. There's at least a potential for that, and there's been some research that showed that actually does happen. So they're my concerns about the mRNA system. Okay. And those concerns are valid and have been experimentally shown to at least possibly happen. So this paper, for example, recently showed that a 55-year-old man who developed severe widespread chronic illness after an mRNA shot, he still had mRNA and spike protein in his body 3.5 years after the shot. So forget the short-lived bit, the mRNA breaks down and doesn't hang around, and forget the stays in the arm bit. He's got systemic effects, multiple diseases all around his body, and they're finding mRNA and spike proteins all around his body still. So here's an example of the things I was worried about.
Yeah.
Here's an example.
Well, it was only inflammatory, apparently, Bruce.
COVID was more inflammatory. Yeah, okay. Let's not go into that. Look, I'll make one small point in passing. If you get a natural viral illness, most of it stays outside your body, stays in the mucosal compartment. You know, it's a lung infection, it's a throat infection. So only in a limited number of cases does it even invade into the important interior of your body, such as your heart. You know, when you get a head cold, you don't usually get virus in your heart, okay? Because your mucosal immune system, which is designed to defend those entry surfaces, stops it getting in. And if it does get in, it gets in a small amount and over a graduated period of time. So what do they do with the shots? They injected it into you, thus bypassing that mucosal system, and they gave vast amounts into you. And if they got it wrong when they hit a vessel on the way in, that distributed very rapidly all around your body. So yeah, I'm not sure that I agree with that. Was that Dr. Dan or the Dr. Dan?
No, it was Dr. Dan. He must be home because he's on X. He must have been grokking on his commute home, because he did say, by the way, I have to pre-bunk because the health segment usually corresponds to my commute. Can't debunk and drive. Happy to post-bunk too. What's the best way to send Bruce data? So he must be home, because that recent comment was on Rumble. So probably home already, Dr. Dan.
Welcome aboard, Dan. And don't send me data, just grok me. They'll tell me whether I'm right.
Whether you're right or not. Right. That's exactly right.
But I am glad to have Dr. Dan aboard, because I thought this story might interest him. It interested me because, like I say, I'm a new grandfather and got asked about my opinion about vitamin K. So this week we had two mirror image stories in the Freedom Press and the mainstream press. So on your left, you've got this story which says that vitamin K shot has been linked to leukemia in children. And on the right, you've got this ABC Oh No story, which says that Australian parents are refusing vitamin K because of online misinformation. And the ABC is panicking a bit, because even the story says that the acceptance rate for injecting your child on day one with vitamin K has dropped from 98 to 95%. So I'm not sure it's a huge change. Anyway, I said I'd do a little deep dive in this because I had to myself. So let's go over a bit of background. So clotting of the blood is a very complex process. It involves a whole series of proteins that interact and cascade together, probably at least a dozen of the proteins, and then there's any number of other cofactors like calcium and other things. This multi-step process has got plus and minus steps in it. So it's got amplification steps and it's got termination steps. So sometimes the effect of protein A activating protein B is you get more, and sometimes you get less. So it's a complex system, and it has to be, because it needs to be very finely tuned to make sure that you get a blood clot when and where you want it, and you don't get it when and where you don't want it. That's why it has to be complicated. You can't just have an on switch that says, I've cut myself, make a clot, because that ends up in a clot all the way through your body, all your blood solidifies and you die. So it's a complex feedback, multiple level system.
Great design.
It's a very intelligent design, Mark.
Mm.
Okay. Now, vitamin K, which we're talking about, is a critical cofactor in 4 of those steps. And very helpfully in medicine, when I learnt the clotting cascade, vitamin K was important for proteins 2, 7, 9, and 10. And I still remember that because we called them the TV factors at the time. So this was before SBS and Channel 73 and all the millions of stations we've got now. So, yeah. So vitamin K is important in at least 4 places in this coagulation cascade.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, our wise health experts have said that babies don't get enough vitamin K during pregnancy or from breastfeeding and are therefore at risk. Their clotting system isn't going to work properly because there's not enough in breast milk and there's not enough transferred prenatally. So our wise rulers recommend that all babies, irrespective of risk, get a vitamin K shot at birth. That's the current recommendation. So to read what they said, Australia's top experts state babies should not get enough vitamin K from their mothers during pregnancy or when they are breastfeeding. Without vitamin K, they're at risk of a rare disorder called vitamin K deficiency bleeding, or VKDB. Now, first off, I just thought, on first principle, that seems a bit odd, don't you think? So natural transfer before birth and breast milk transfer after birth is insufficient. That
Okay,
seems
so
like
the
a
question
pretty
is,
obvious.
yeah, problem. So the first question would be is, well, why? And where does vitamin K come from, and what's it beneficial for that, obviously?
Well, my first question is, well, how did my ancestors survive?
Yeah, why are we here?
You know, if that's true, how come I'm here? And if that's a real problem, how come evolution didn't fix it? Seems a bit bloody obvious. So on first principles, I thought, okay, that just seems a bit discordant to me. Anyway, that's what the experts say.
Yeah, well,
nevertheless,
because people are actively working on a devolution for humanity, Bruce. That's probably the problem.
now if that worked, then the foreskin would stop appearing at birth, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is on some people's heads instead. But anyway.
Nevertheless, despite my obvious question about, okay, how come nature got this wrong and I'm here? Nevertheless, our wise experts say that nature did get it wrong and that all babies should therefore get a vitamin K injection at birth. And they prefer an injection. So the easiest and most reliable way to give babies vitamin K is by injection. One injection just after birth will protect a baby for many months. Since about 1980, most newborn babies in Australia have been given a vitamin K injection. Now, they do admit that doesn't have to be an injection. It can be oral, because in nature, nobody injects vitamin K, you know, in the prehistoric tribe. At most, they might eat it, but they're certainly not injecting it. So again, on first principles, this just seems like an odd claim. Nevertheless, they said vitamin K can also be given by mouth. Several oral doses are essential to give enough protection because vitamin K is not absorbed as well when it is given by mouth, and the effect does not last as long. So getting an injection of vitamin K is better than getting it God's intended way through your diet. Just reminds me a little bit of that sort of COVID era claim, which was that natural immunity, the immunity you got normally through the mechanisms that have existed throughout millennia, was not as good as an injection. You know, you get your cheap injected immunity to COVID. It's better than actually being naturally immune after you've had it, apparently. It just seems like a similar sort of story to me. So here's a few thoughts. One thing they hammered into us as trainee doctors is that children are not small adults, and that's especially true of babies. Babies are not very small adults. And what that means is that the reference ranges for anything you care to measure in them, how fast their heart is, what they weigh, what their blood pressure is, how much sodium's in their blood, etc., etc., etc. You've got to have a specific reference range for that particular developmental stage of human. You can't just do an average and say, well, the baby's got less, because the baby is not representative of the rest. So my first question is, who said, and what's the evidence, that the level that a baby's born with is abnormal? Even though it's different, who says it's abnormal for a start? And if this really was a problem, why hasn't evolution fixed it? It's had plenty of time.
Billions of years, apparently.
Well, let's not go back into the whole evolution thing. Now, One of the things I learned in trauma medicine, and it's not what I was taught, I learned this by working at the coalface and working out what I was taught was wrong.
Mhm.
And one of my great sayings I used to drum into my students' head was, normal numbers are for normal people.
Mhm.
And a
Mhm.
day one baby is not a normal people. So you can't necessarily cross-transfer the same reference range. And that furthermore, if you try and use normal ranges in abnormal situations, you might actually cause harm.
Mhm.
So as an example, we used to do things to injured trauma patients to try and make them look normal in terms of blood pressure, heart rate, hemoglobin, etc. And those things were often harmful. We could make their numbers normal, but they didn't need normal numbers because they were severe trauma patients. They needed something else. Okay. So here's a couple of examples of that. So back in 2005, I worked in a very, very busy trauma centre just near the Sunni Triangle during the Troubles in Iraq. And we got a huge number of mass trauma patients. 15 a day would not have been unusual, multiple at the same time. And so we very often got very badly injured soldiers who had lost a lot of blood. So they came in with what's called severe shock. They were white, sometimes they were unconscious, they had heart rates of 160. They looked terrible, they looked near death because they were. So one of the things we tended to do was go, okay, well, their blood pressure's 60/40. That's not normal. Normal is 120/80. So we used to try and make the blood pressure back to normal. And we did that by filling them up with fluid and blood products and so forth. And we often did massive transfusions, dozens, if not 100 units of blood and blood products. That's what we did because we needed to get their blood pressure back to normal. So we thought. But we were wrong. What we hadn't realized is that shock was not a pathological state in an injured soldier. It was a therapeutic state. So when the soldier got injured, they dumped, say, 40% of their blood at the point of wounding. Their blood pressure dropped to 50. They fell on the ground and stopped moving. And the hydraulic pressure in their vessels was very low, which meant their clots could form and not pop off. And they did. That's how your body survives a severe trauma. You've got to clot yourself at the point of wounding. You're not going to last all the way to hospital with a hole in your liver unless you stop the bleeding yourself by dropping your blood pressure way down and forming a clot. Nevertheless, we get those soldiers in, we go, oh my God, the blood pressure's only 60, and we pump them up high, and then all of a sudden the clot would come off and they start bleeding again. So trying for normal numbers in a shocked patient was actually bad for them. Now, we don't do this now. We call it permissive hypotension. We understand that a severe trauma patient needs to have low blood pressure. I went one step further. I called it therapeutic hypotension. It was necessary. Now, here's another example where the reference ranges for numbers don't apply. So another thing we found, and something that was really quite a surprise and we didn't expect, is that sometimes patients would survive severe bleeding and then die 2 or 3 days later from a clot. How did that work? So normally with massive transfusion, your blood stops clotting because you put a lot of cold, old stored stuff in it, red cells, products, which doesn't clot as well. It's not as good as real blood. And so we'd get a soldier in, they'd have their surgery, they'd survive it. And then a few days later, they get a clot form somewhere, travel up to the lungs and kill them. So they didn't bleed to death, they clotted to death. And at the time, we understood that all severe trauma patients became what's called coagulopathic because of all the physiological trauma they had and the fact that we destroyed what was left of their blood by pumping in lots of cold, old red cells and saline and all other things. We actually made them what's called coagulopathic. Their blood clotted poorly as part of the whole process. And so as soon as they'd had their surgery, they go around to the intensive care unit and we'd fix that. We'd work out, okay, why is their blood not clotting? Which clotting factors they need? We do that and we turn their blood back to normal so they would clot. And then on day 3, they die because they did clot. And what we've actually learned is that after you've controlled the bleeding, you've actually got to anticoagulate severe trauma patients or they will clot. So just another example where you can't assume that an abnormal patient should have normal numbers. And that references way back to what I was saying, which is who says low vitamin K in a newborn is pathological? Maybe it's low for a reason. Maybe there's a benefit in having it low. Fascinating, eh?
Yeah, 1984 Punk seems to think so. There you go.
There you go. Next, what is the actual risk of bleeding if you have this apparently normal newborn who's got low vitamin K? And here's what the literature said. Well, first of all, the claim is without vitamin K, they're at risk of getting a rare disorder called vitamin K deficiency bleeding or VKDB. Okay, how big is the risk? So I did a bit of Googling on that, and the answers I got are that the risk of VKDB, of a vitamin K deficiency bleed, with no vitamin K supplement, no injection, no oral, is about 1 in 10,000 births. And that doesn't mean 1 in 10,000. And it doesn't mean your baby dies. It just means they get something that you identify as a bleed because they were not clotting properly. I mean, VKDBs can be serious. You get one in your brain, it's a very serious thing. But it doesn't mean that every one of the 1 in 10,000 is on that serious end of the scale. And they also noted that the risk in a baby was not random. The higher risk was in the sicker babies. So if your baby was premature or had liver disease, and there's a number of reasons for that, or if the mother was on certain drugs which suppressed the liver, et cetera, then it was more likely. So the actual risk of one of these VKDBs is less than 1 in 10,000. And note there, they've already said that there's a higher risk if you do a neonatal circ. Add that to your list. Why would you do it? You know?
Yep.
Hello. So you can avoid that risk by not doing it, at least not doing it at that point. So what we've established there is that what in medicine is called the number needed to treat is bigger than 10,000. So that means how many patients do I have to give this treatment in order to save one of them? The numbers that are given there, it's over 10,000. NNT, number needed to treat, is over 10,000. Why is that relevant? So, okay, when you're giving a drug routinely to a population who appear healthy, if you're only going to potentially benefit 1 in 10,000 of them, it has to be an extremely safe product or drug because you're putting 9,999 others at risk who don't need it. So you've got to have very robust safety, and otherwise the risk benefit's not there. You know, no good giving this to all the babies and finding 20 of them turn out autistic and one of them doesn't get a vitamin K dependent bleed. It's a negative thing. So the larger the NNT, then the more you have to be convinced of the safety of the product. Okay, is the product safe? So I went to the Australian government's advice line on this, and they are a bit lukewarm in recommending the safe and effectives here. Because what they said was, over the 30 years vitamin K has been given to new babies in Australia, it seems to have caused no problems.
Wow, empirical data there, Bruce.
Well, that's a ringing endorsement, isn't it? We didn't notice any trouble.
haven't done any clinical trials or anything like that, have we? Or any follow-ups?
And that's the point. What trouble did they look for? How long did they look for it? How big was the study group? And, you know, a bit like the SIDS in babies, did you look for COVID spike proteins in their brains? Hell no. But we didn't find any.
Yeah, that's right. Because we didn't look. You don't look, you don't find, don't you? So it's nothing to see here, Bruce.
Don't take a temperature, you can't find a fever. Exactly right.
Yep.
Now, second point here is, given that almost all babies in Australia get this, 95, maybe down to 90, up to 98%, where's your control group? even if you wanted to do a study, it's going to be pretty hard to find a control group because there aren't many of them. And this, of course, was the plan during COVID. If you get everybody treated with the magical injections, then there is no control group. Whatever happens, you can't work out whether there's a difference between two groups. So I suspect that's the case here. I doubt whether they've had a robust look. I doubt that they even knew what to look for. And we've seen this in the vax injury studies. They have groups that are too small to show a difference. They don't chase them long enough. They throw out the odd inconvenient result, and they list a whole lot of adverse effects as unrelated. That's typical. So I'm not reassured by this lukewarm finding that, oh, well, it seems to be all right. That that really doesn't reassure me, I'm afraid.
No, well, the Amish are always going to be a good control group, aren't they, Bruce?
Yes, yes. All right.
Or,
now,
you know, all the people that registered like me with the vax control group, there was a website that was set up during the whole COVID thing, and I was part of the control group, and yeah, it was there. So there's quite a few people out there that were registered to that. They were taking data and that. So yeah.
So you stuck your neck out, did you?
Yeah.
You'll be first up against the wall come the revolution.
Of course, naturally. I'll see you standing side by side with you, brother.
I never publicise my views at all.
Sure you don't. Only 118 episodes of them.
All right, now back to HM government's pronunciations about vitamin K. So they did admit this. Some studies suggest that injections of vitamin K might be linked to childhood cancer, but recent studies have not found any link with cancer. The NHMRC has looked carefully at these studies and other evidence and has concluded that vitamin K is not associated with childhood cancer. Okay, so our wise rulers said, we're aware that some studies raised a red flag, but we've got other studies that didn't. And a reminder of the precautionary principle in medicine. If one study says there's a problem and another study says, no, there's not, you don't just go, oh, we'll go with the she's right study. That's not how it works. That's not what the precautionary principle is. So if one study suggests a problem, doesn't matter how many studies you've got to say it isn't a problem. If you've got one decent study that says, hey, there's something going on here, we red flag it, we limit it, we study it, we restrict it, we monitor it. So our wise rulers have admitted, hey, look, some studies say that there's a problem here, but we've concluded not to worry about it. That's what they're saying.
Yeah. Yep. Which is, I mean, ultimately, it's even worse than that over COVID, since we found out, and even people have been in this space for decades. The studies that show something have been suppressed, and the publishers of the studies and that have only put up the ones that have suited the narrative of either the pharmaceutical company or the government, you know, vaccination policy. We know this sort of stuff now. It's all, you know, the information's out there now, like that just shows that.
And you're right. I mean, the fact that there are some published studies that say there's a problem, how many didn't get through the peer review process and even see the light of day? How many did the Lancet and the New England Journal of Medicine just go, not publishing that, mate? The fact that there's any published studies that are questioning it probably means there's a lot more than are being admitted.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Oh, yeah, 100%. There's Alana g'day, saying every baby I know who had jaundice had a Hep injection before jaundice. So there you go.
Yeah. Now put that one back up if you would. So just to segue into that, jaundice is a sign of liver insufficiency. So when your red cells break down, they release pigments which ultimately turn yellow. So, you know, if you get a bruise, when the blood's in your skin, it's purple. And then over a few days, that blood breaks down and it turns yellow. Jaundice is the same thing. It's a pigment in your blood that normally your liver will clear. And so if it builds up, it says your liver's not clearing it. Okay. Now, Hep B is interesting because hepatitis B obviously is a disease of the liver.
Mhm.
So you can sort of think how there might be a relationship there. And the other thing to say, of course, is Hep B is the other thing that they like your kid getting on day one, so they can't get out of it. And again, like circumcision, unless the mother is known to carry hepatitis B, that kid has zero risk effectively till they become a teenager and are either sharing needles or engaging in promiscuous sex with prostitutes.
Mhm.
And by the way, the shot you give them on day one doesn't last until then.
Mhm.
You'd have to do it again anyway.
Mm.
So, but it's another example of, we just have to give it to everybody because, that'll keep our numbers up, and then no one can say no because we jammed it into them, 5 minutes after they're born.
Yeah.
Let's return to vitamin K. So what about the people who say, well, it's just a vitamin, calm down, it's just a vitamin, right? What can go wrong if you give a vitamin K injection? What can go wrong? Okay. Here's a few thoughts. Okay. It's not just a vitamin K injection. So I looked up what's in a vitamin K injection, and down on the right, you got at least 5 things. So you got the item itself, vitamin K. And note what they've said there. It's a natural plant-based vitamin found in leafy green vegetables. I'll come back to that.
Mm.
It's got polysorbate 80. That's a chemical. It's got propylene glycol. That's another chemical related to antifreeze, which would have a thing on the packet, do not drink. It's got sodium acetate anhydrous and glacial acetic acid, whatever the hell that is. And it's got alcohol, benzyl alcohol. So it's not just vitamin K in your injection. It's at least those 5 things. And when I downloaded this picture of the ampule, look what it says there. Contains no more than 500 micrograms per litre of aluminium.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Why the hell would it have aluminium in it? Aluminium is an adjuvant that is used to stimulate an immune reaction in certain vaccines. So I looked into that, and apparently aluminium is not a regular ingredient in this injection, but sometimes it's a contaminant and may contain trace amounts. So that's why they've said not more than. But hell, they're saying there could be aluminium in this as well. And as you know, I have seen persuasive evidence that a lot of the childhood chronic disease and autism evidence is likely linked to aluminium injections. So there you go. It's not just a vitamin. What are you worried about?
Like they put there, the man-made identical version of the natural plant-based. Yeah.
Now, hopefully it's purified. And here's another thing. So might I remind you that even if the vitamin K in the vial is only natural vitamin K and there's nothing else in it, it's not natural to inject it. In nature, you eat it. You don't inject it. And as we know, you have a mucosal immune system which filters and keeps out toxins. And if you inject it, you bypass it, which, by the way, is one of the reasons they injected the COVID shots. They didn't want your immune system getting in the way. And to make an example, I've got a challenge for you, Mark. I've made you 2 grande lattes. I want you to drink one now. And at the end of the show, I want you to inject the other one and just compare the 2 effects. Would you do that for me?
Lucky I don't do lattes.
So the point I'm making is, even if it is just vitamin K, injecting it is not the same as ingesting it, which is what happens in nature.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, remember...
So do certain foods have vitamin K in abundance or not? Are you getting
Let's
that?
go into that because they put this little advert for the factory food and bugs people up here. So they said that vitamin K is a natural plant-based vitamin found in leafy green vegetables. Now, when I read that, I thought that doesn't gel true because we were taught in medicine that the vitamin K dependent factors, A, D, E, and K, are fat soluble. So vitamin K is fat soluble. Okay. Not a lot of fat in plants. There is, however, a lot of fat in animals.
Yes.
So I think they've deliberately chosen not to tell us that you can get this in meat as well, because that's not the PC. So I actually did do a goggle for where can you get vitamin K? How can you ingest? How can you get it? And the website I looked at listed in order 15 different sources of vitamin K in order of how much. And the first 14 of them are plants: mustards, cheese, beets, collard, kale, broccoli, etc., and only the 15th one on the list was a meat of some sort, chicken thigh. Okay.
Is that because of the percentage that it comes? They're talking about percentages there. So they've got 346 of the DV for mustard greens, and does it work its way down the list because of the percentage?
So that's an order of how much vitamin K is in things you might eat sequentially. So they've said that of all the things they listed, the top 14 are plants. Now, I want to make the point here that this is a trick that's often used by the vegetarian community, because they'll tell you how much nutrient X is in a plant. That doesn't mean that when you eat it, you can absorb those nutrients. There's an extra step. You've got to not only eat it, you've got to absorb it. And that circles back to one of my common themes, which is that plants don't want to be eaten, and they are doing a constant chemical warfare on anything that tries to eat them. So they either are bitter, or sometimes they've got physical defenses like thorns, but they're full of chemicals. And as an example, most of our drugs come from nature originally. Caffeine comes from coffee and tea. Caffeine's a drug. Opium, the opiates, the painkillers, comes from the opium poppy. Aspirin comes from the bark of a tree. Statins come from a moss. So there are many, many chemical warfare agents which plants make as a defense. So simply listing, hey, if you eat this green leaf, it's full of vitamin K, it's quite likely that it's also got other things in it to make it harder for you to absorb it. So they're called anti-nutrients. So a plant might have plenty of nutrients, but it might also have plenty of anti-nutrients, which prevents you absorbing the nutrients. And so plants are constantly doing this to defend themselves against grazing animals. So the list I've given you there is how much vitamin K is in these things, not how much vitamin K can you absorb out of these things. Not the same thing. I haven't deep dived into it. I don't know. But it makes sense to me that if vitamin K is fat soluble, if you eat fatty meat, it's probably got vitamin K in it. That's one way to get vitamin D, by the way. It's in the meat. It's in the dairy. And by the way, one of the other sort of animal ways you can get vitamin K is in dairy products. What do you think breast milk is? And if you get a human baby, how many green leaves are they eating in the first few months? Okay.
Yeah.
So Phil's got the point there. That's great. All right. So that's my deep dive into vitamin K. It's not as simple as it sounds, but I think it does illustrate a whole lot of the things you might think about when you're looking at any mandated or recommended drug, poison, that our wise experts say is good for you and you should put into your children without their consent.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, as we know, the vitamin K as well as Hep B, all that is part of the pharmaceutical benefits scheme. So it's free to Australians, but the government pays it. So the pharmaceutical companies have got a ongoing, lifelong cash cow by countries like Australia and America putting it on their vaccination schedule or their immunisation schedule. And there's big money and profits to be made on that, rather than the alternative healthy lifestyle messages about other ways that you can possibly build up vitamin K. So this is all this stuff that we, and people have obviously known about this for decades before I'm becoming aware of it. But man, the light's been shone, you can't turn it off.
Yep. And look, let's face it, giving your kid one vitamin K shot at birth is not probably a huge profit line. and giving them one hepatitis B at birth is probably not a huge profit line compared to the 60, 70 other things they're going to get over the next 18 years. But some sources say, yeah, but it establishes the principle that you stick needles in your kid. You do it from day one. The parents are used to the fact the kid gets a needle, the kid squawks, you need to do it for health.
Yeah.
So
it's still beneficial when millions of babies who have been almost mandated because of a schedule, it's still profitable that way, isn't it? So, yeah, but I get your point as well with that. Yeah.
All right. So enough about that. And we'll finish out with some diversity stuff. So what have we got in diversity? So one of the features of mass immigration of incompatible cultures into Europe and the European diaspora, Australia, etc., has been the emergence of a new type of crime, and that's the vehicle assault. You know, the thing I was accused of doing, but didn't.
Yeah.
And in the
person
typical
damaged your car.
Typical vehicular assault, you have an Islamic perpetrator who drives a vehicle into a crowd of people at a cultural event that they find offensive. Christmas, gay Mardi Gras, whatever. And in Germany alone, there have been more than 10 of these in the last decade. And there was another one just recently. So to read the bolding there, Germany has experienced numerous vehicle ramming attacks since the 2016, not going to pronounce that for me.
Which way is it?
Right.
Oh,
Breitscheidsplatz.
Breitscheidsplatz. Yep, Breitscheidsplatz. Yep,
Christmas
Breitscheidsplatz.
market causing fatalities and injuries. So there's been one of these a year for the last decade. And sure enough, there was another one just recently. And in this case, 1 dead, 16 injured when a vehicle was driven into a crowd at a Pride march. Now, the alleged perpetrator, who's now dead because the police shot him, was a German citizen called Abdul Balut. So I'm puzzled because that's a good Germanic name. You would have thought he'd be steeped in Germanic culture, except for the fact that he's a German-born Muslim of Lebanese parents. So, yep, it fits the pattern that we just talked about. And the pattern is the same, not only in Germany, it's throughout Western Europe, it's up in New England, et cetera, et cetera. And so we had on the same day this story from the UK, which says that UK cities are rolling out diversity barriers because vehicle ramming attacks are now normal. Now, the comments section showed that the Indigenous Britons know all about this and they also know what the cause is. So here's what some of them said. Before uncontrolled mass immigration, we did not need diversity barriers. Why? Because as regularly seen throughout Europe, radical Islamic terrorists like to murder innocent people by driving their vehicles into crowds. And thirdly, maybe enforcing the barriers called borders and keeping the terrorists out of the country would be a more intelligent effort. So the Indigenous Britons know what's going on, but the best thing that their wise rulers can do is say, well, put some bollards up. Just get used to bollards. That's a cultural thing too now.
Good money in bollards too, as COVID scheme doing. So diversity bollards are giving some company a lot of business as well.
Well, repeat business probably.
Yep.
All right. Now here's some comments on a slightly related story. So during the week, there's been quite a few outrage news pieces about Dr. Jihad. Now, Dr. Jihad is an Australian doctor who travelled to Syria in 2015 to work medically for ISIS. Now, the reason this story suddenly surfaced is because he was believed dead, but he's been found alive in a Baghdad prison. Now, because he's Australian, he wants to come home and the government can't necessarily say, well, you're not allowed to enter the country. Yeah, as an Australian citizen, you are allowed, apart from during COVID, of course, but generally you can return to your country. You don't need permission to return to your own country.
Well, the bride's in.
Yes, that's true. I wonder if there's any relationship there. So here's my comments about that. The story itself admitted that his claim is that he went to work as a doctor. So the story says he did not directly participate in combat operations, but worked within what was known as the health department of ISIS, using his medical qualifications and experience in the health field. It also said he worked in several medical facilities run by ISIS terrorist gangs, providing treatment to wounded ISIS members. So the outrage is about the fact that he was a doctor for the wrong side. That's what it's about. Now, they paint him as a terrorist and they show pictures of him with a body armor vest and an AK, so assault rifle. But here's the thing. His story and mine have some similarities. So I also joined an armed group which deployed in the Middle East multiple times. And I was also photographed wearing body armor and carrying an assault rifle. So I think there's some similarity there. And by the way, we were required to do this. The threat level was such that when you're moving about outside, that's what you had to wear. That ain't super fun in Kandahar or Baghdad in the height of summer, which for some reason is both times when I was deployed to those places, it was the height of summer. As an aside, I spent 6 months in Kandahar and it was over 100 degrees in the old money. That's what, 37, every day for the entire 6 months that I was there, every single day.
Sweat a bit, get your body weight down with the sweat, Bruce.
And by the way, you've got a bone dome on which doesn't ventilate. Your body armor is probably 14 to 16 kilos, depending on what you're carrying. 6 mags is 3 kilos and a stye is probably 5 kilos. So yeah, you're walking around with a cooker on your head. Oh, did I say cooker?
Yeah, cooker.
And I don't know, carrying 22, 25 kilos. That's just before you even start doing anything. So, anyway, that's not the point I'm making. So the point I'm making is that there are some similarities between our two life journeys. He was apparently there in 2015. I was away in 2005, 12 and 14. So, by the way, let's just examine what the Geneva Convention says about medical services in war. So what are the laws of war regarding medicine? So here's what it says. Under the Geneva Conventions, and yes, by the way, it is conventions, it's not convention. If anyone says it's not in the Geneva Convention, that just proves they haven't read it, because there's been any number of them. Medical services, personnel, units and transports in war are strictly protected to ensure the care of the wounded and sick without discrimination. Key pillars include protecting medical staff, safeguarding hospitals and respecting official emblems. Second, medical personnel, doctors, nurses and chaplains must be respected and protected at all times. If captured, they are not treated as prisoners of war. They should continue their medical duties and be returned when possible. So if it's true that Dr. Jihad was working as a doctor only, then when he was captured, he was not a prisoner of war and his rights should have been respected and he should have been returned under the laws of war. Australia signs up to these laws. Now, obviously, there's a huge number of wrinkles in that story, but the point I'm making is that the media has absolutely demonized him for probably doing exactly what I did, except in my case, I was on the approved side.
Well, you're probably doing it for the Allies, I guess, and I guess this is the challenging question about it all: is that if he had, as a doctor, if he had the skills, why wasn't he supporting, people that probably weren't part of the ISIS side of things? But as COVID pandemic says as well, I wonder if Dr. Jihad would have treated any of the wounded enemy soldiers as our doctors would no doubt have done for captured ISIS soldiers. I doubt it.
I don't know. That's speculation. I'm just saying these are the laws of war that Australia signed up to. I participated in those wars along with Australia's proxy, the United States. You like that? Proxy? For the Australian regime.
Yeah.
So rather than reflexively just going, oh, he's a bad man because he was working for ISIS. Yeah, you've got to dig a bit deeper here, because I was also doing exactly the same thing, just wearing a different T-shirt.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Based on what we know.
Point.
I don't know if he went out on patrols and shot people. And, you know, if you're displaying a Red Cross, for example, you're allowed to use weapons in self-defense of either your patients or the hospital. So if I'm working in the military hospital in Kandahar and the wire's breached and some Taliban come in and start shooting and blowing stuff up, I'm allowed to shoot back at them as a doctor. That's fine. I'm protecting my patients. What I'm not allowed to do is to go outside the wire and do offensive patrols. I'm no longer a doctor. I'm a soldier.
Mm-hmm.
So different set of rules.
Very cool. Yep.
Good. Interesting to finish on. And on that, I think we will finish on that.
No, look at you go. Oh, we're cracking just over 2 1/4. That's not too bad there, Brucey Bruce.
Now, having said I'm going to finish, can I actually just bring something else up ad hoc? And I'm hoping Dan's still there, but you showed me some stuff off screen where Dr. Dan was criticising Judy Wileman for her research on vaccines.
Yep.
One of the things Dr. Dan posted was that Judy Wileman's PhD was suspect because she overly relied on the hygiene model for the decline in infectious disease without giving sufficient weight to vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
Might be paraphrasing, that's more or less what he said. So I pulled this out. So I've shown this chart before, but there's a chart of 6 different infectious diseases which declined radically over the last 150, 200 years.
Mm.
Let's look at the timing. So on the left, we got whooping cough pertussis, which had markedly reduced in its death rate before the vaccine came in. And indeed, the shape of the curve did not change. On the right, we've got diphtheria, we've got the same thing. The battle against whooping cough and diphtheria was largely won before the vaccines were even released.
Mm.
Now, this is even more interesting because it's the same for measles. The war against measles in terms of being a deadly disease was largely won before vaccines came out. And on the right, this is interesting because the war against scarlet fever was also largely won before vaccines came out because there was no scarlet fever vaccine. It's exactly the same curve.
Mm.
So the fact that all of these infectious diseases were in marked decline before vaccines, and that included ones for which there were no vaccines, I think possibly refutes what Dan said, which is that Judy Wileman was relying excessively on the hygiene model rather than the vaccine model for the improvement.
Mm.
What vaccines? Scarlet fever. Typhoid, the same. Not really any vaccine, largely gone. Polio, oh, there's a hot potato. Again, largely gone before vaccination came out in terms of being a deadly disease.
And why was there a bump in 1962 for polio once the vaccines were out? That's interesting.
I've got 62 back here at the start. Polio's a whole...
the vaccine. Yeah, vaccine come in there, and then in 1962 there's a blip.
Look, let's not get too tied up in polio at the end of the show in the postscript, but I would say the story that we've been told about polio vaccines saving everybody from polio, and that's the answer. And anybody wants to quiz you on vaccines, the first thing they say is, you just want polio to come back. It's a far more complicated story. The Moth in the Iron Lung book, Forrest McCready, goes into it. One of the things they note is that at the same time they brought the vaccine out, they changed the definition of polio, made it much harder to diagnose polio at the same time. Now, if they'd just changed the definition and not brought a vaccine out, they still would have reduced the number of cases markedly because it was harder to diagnose one. You had to have it for longer. It had to meet certain criteria. So... And here's another one maybe Dr. Dan could explain. So that's the general decline in the rate of scurvy in England from, say, the last 100 years. And scurvy is a dietary disease, vitamin C deficiency. So over the same period, 1960s, about when most of these childhood cough and sneeze disease vaccines came out. How come scurvy had almost gone away before that? Well, it's because it was diet, nutrition, and hygiene that mattered. Scurvy is not an infectious disease, but it also shown exactly the same decline as all the infectious diseases. I wonder whether Dr. Dan's actually been putting too much reliance on vaccines as the cure for all of these historical childhood illnesses rather than Judy Weilerman doing the opposite.
Yeah, it works both ways, doesn't it? At the end of the day, it works both ways. Yeah, but he was saying how many dead kids are acceptable. But anyway, works both ways.
Madeleine Albright said 500,000 when the US invaded Iraq. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Dan,
exactly.
when you tell me how many kids die of side effects of whatever vaccine you're promoting, then I'll be able to judge whether how many kids die of vaccine presentable diseases. The problem is they systematically hide, suppress, relabel and deny side effects due to vaccines, and they promote every death. So we don't know.
Yep.
We don't know how many is acceptable because we don't know what the balance is. You know, risk reward. That's what we don't know. Anyway, enough of that. Thanks for joining us, Dan. Always appreciate it. Hope you learned something.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely right, my brother. Absolutely right. And obviously people can jump on across to my Faith, Culture, Politics Rumble channel to see that interview with Dr. Julie Weilerman, and there's a whole heap of shorts that I've put on for her as well. I think she's going to link it to an article. So there you go. That's the show. Good on you, Bruce, and stay with the light, my friend. It's stay on the good side of things. Stay on the good side. And I just thought a bit of trivia for movies, Bruce, just before we go. If people are movie buffs, right? We talk about, because I talk about a lot with my faith about we talk about Jesus and we've got the enemy. You're talking about evil in the world, and obviously for me as a Christian, I understand there's evil. I believe he has a name in the Bible. It's Satan, Lucifer, the devil. So you've got Jesus and the devil. But if people are movie buffs, you've got, if people have watched The Lion, The Witch and the Wardrobe, people need to choose whether they want to, if they want to be on Aslan's side or they want to be on the White Witch's side. If they've watched The Hobbit, they want to ask themselves, do you want to be on Gandalf's, Frodo and Aragorn's side, or do you want to be on Sauron's side? If you liked Harry Potter, Bruce, do you want to be on Harry's side or Lord Voldemort? And if you're a Star Wars fan like I am, do you want to be on Luke Skywalker's side or Emperor Palpatine and Darth Sidious? So there's a bit of an analogy there for movie buffs, and you don't necessarily have to be a Christian for that, but you need to choose as well if you're an agnostic or an atheist. There is evil in the world, and you need to choose, do you want to be part of the light or the dark? I choose Jesus and those characters on the light side of those movies, and that is where I sit, and that's what I'm going to continue to try and call out. There is much evil in the world, and but people have got a choice. Who do you want to follow? Who do you want to follow?
Thank you, brother.
Let's not follow the empire, Bruce. Anyway, God bless everybody. Have a great week. See you next week, brother.
Ciao.
All the signs were there for all to see. The signs that we lost our way. When we jail our heroes and applaud our villains, we turn our hearts away. Like a silent choir, too scared to sing the anthem from a braver day. A song our children need to hear. The ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix. Too scared to sing the anthem from a a song our children still need to hear. The ballad of